Hello, once Forest Focus, as Nottingham Forest are strongly linked with two Juventus players tonight, so we'll hear from Italian football expert Adam Summerton on both of them, plus Chief and Ruby on one of them, plus Fletch was in LA watching Botafogo at the Club World Cup, so I'll mention his verdict on them two at the end. But as I say, Adam Summerton, TNT Sports commentator on Serie A, up first. He'll be talking to us about Timothy Weah and Samuel Mbangula. That's Mbangula, sorry, who have been linked with Forest tonight. Reported fee of between 20 and 23 million, depending on who you read. That's Fabrizio Romano tweeting about that. Other reputable sources in Italy as well. Sky Sports, Italy mentioning that as well. So it seems very much legit. Timothy Weah is a 25-year-old American international, son of George Weah, the legendary striker. Of course, ex-PSG, ex-Lille, had a spell on loan at Celtic as well. He's a right winger, but listening to Adam, he's got some versatility as well. He's played right back at times this season, even as a striker. So he can play right wing. You'll hear from Ruby later and Chief on them as well about where you think he fits in, having played so much for America with those guys out there. Mbangula, 21-year-old Belgian left winger, under 21 international. I think he's been called up once to the senior squad, as Adam was saying. Breakthrough season last season, 3 goals, 4 assists in Serie A. So he is a prospect as well. So we shall get Adam's thoughts on both of those. Spoke to him for about 20 minutes earlier, very short notice. So really appreciate that from Adam. Right, let's get into that, and then we'll have a word for Trent Navigation, of course, and we'll hear from Chief and Ruby, and I'll mention Fletcher's thoughts about the Club World Cup. Botafogo beaten 1-0 by Atletico Madrid tonight on the other side. But up first is Adam Summerton. Adam Summerton, great to have you back with us at the shortest of short notice. You've done us a real good turn, not for the first time on this podcast, so really appreciate it. How are you this evening?
I'm really good, thank you. Yeah, I was just, my kids were upstairs on the phone to their friends, so I thought I'd use the time I'm 9 days into trying to learn Italian, so I can order a coffee with sugar. But yeah, I was just doing an Italian lesson, which I was finding quite difficult. So you've saved me, really.
Well, this sounds like when Trent signed for Real Madrid and whipped out a fantastic Spanish. I hope you're not jumping ship to an Italian commentary team, but yeah, good skills, certainly. So the reason we've got Adam on, as normal, is his expertise and interest in Serie A, having commentated on them for TNT for a number of years. Forest tonight linked with 2 players from Juventus, Timothy Weah and Samuel Mbangula. You'll probably correct me if I'm right or wrong about that. Just tell us, maybe, so we start with Mbangula, because if I'm saying that right, he's someone I don't know very much about at all. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, it's Mbangula, and he's a player who really made his breakthrough into the Juve first team. First game of last season, actually. It was Thiago Motta who came in, as you'll remember, at the start of last season. And I think it was a surprise even to the player. And in fact, his agent had said as much as well, that he was used in the first game of last season, because he'd not even been a regular starter for the second team in the 23-24 season. He'd made 23 league appearances and 16 of them were as a sub. So when he appeared in the first game of the season, as I say, it was something of a surprise. But he was never a regular during last season, but he did come on often as a substitute, got plenty of appearances and scored quite a few important goals, actually. I think he got 3 goals, 3 assists in the league. And as I say, he contributed from the bench on quite a few occasions. He joined Juve in the summer of 2020. He sort of was brought up in Belgian football, so he was at Club Bruges for 5 years. He was at Anderlecht for a year before he came to Juventus, and ordinarily he'll play on the left wing. He can play on the right wing. He can also play inside, but I've seen him play most on the left-hand side, where he looks to cut inside on his right foot. He's got an eye for goal. He can provide an assist. He can be creative. He can be impactful, as I say, from the bench. He had his first senior international call-up for Belgium in November. So he's played for their under-21s. And so there is a degree of international experience there, albeit at youth level, but he's been around the senior squad too. So he would be an interesting signing to see how he were to kick on, particularly if he were to get more regular first team action. But he's somebody who was playing in the Champions League last season, of course, with Juventus. In fact, I remember him scoring against PSV. So he's an exciting young player. He's clearly well thought of with Belgium too, 21 years old. So he's somebody I think as well who has got more room for growth, a lot more room for growth, which is why I say I'd like to see him played more regularly as a starter, because he certainly wasn't that last season at Juventus. More often than not would come off the bench for them.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you being on here a year ago and waxing lyrical about Nikola Milenkovic, saying he was Premier League ready, certain starter, and you were more than proven right about that. When we're talking about this player, and we'll come on to Weah, he's someone then who would be more competition for Hudson-Odoi, and then to push him and ultimately perhaps take his place in time. He's not immediately a Premier League star then as a starter, you would say.
Well, not from what I've seen so far, but you never quite know, do you, with young players? At 21, if he were to hit the ground running at Forest, if he got an opportunity from the start, who knows? I mean, there is real ability there. But I think what Forest need, particularly with European football now and the extra demands that will bring on the squad, is they need that strength in depth. And he's somebody certainly who helped provide that for Juventus last season. So I see no reason why he couldn't do that at Forest. I like the way that he plays. He can be quite direct, which would probably suit the way that Forest play. So I could see that this could be a signing that would work. I wouldn't be as confident that he would be a raving success as I was with somebody like Milenkovic, because when I was talking to you about Milenkovic, I'd seen him play senior first-team football for a number of seasons, both at club and international level. So there was a large body of work to judge him upon. Less so with Mbangula. He is a young player, somebody who's making his way in the game, but he's had a good grounding, to be at clubs like Club Brugge and Anderlecht in Belgium, and then to come through Juve's academy as well. And he was somebody who really caught the eye of Thiago Motta, who, as I say, I mean, he came from... When he appeared on the first day of last season, a lot of people were like, who's this guy? And I remember his agent saying even we didn't expect him to be anywhere near the senior squad for the first game of the season. So, but I didn't feel that he ever looked phased at being around the first team setup. I felt that he gave the impression of somebody who felt comfortable and that he belonged there. And as I say, even when he played in the Champions League, I felt like this was a player who believed that he belonged at that level. So for somebody who is so young, I mean, to have played for a club of the stature, of the size of Juventus, and to have played in the Champions League, I think that is quite impressive, really.
What about style of play and type of winger he is? Would he be comparable to, I guess, Elanga and Hudson-Odoi, different types of wingers? Would he be comparable to either of them or someone else that our listeners would be familiar with in the Premier League?
As I say, I mean, you're most likely to see him cutting in from the left-hand side. So that's where he was used the most. As I say, he can be quite direct, does like to cut inside. I have seen him sort of look to try and play centrally as well. He's got an eye for goal. I mean, people look at the fact he only scored 3 goals, but in the league last season. But you've got to remember that his minutes were fairly restricted. When he was coming on, very often it was as a late substitute. And he scored several goals in big occasions as well. I mean, I talked about him scoring in the Champions League too. So I'm trying to think of a particular player that I would compare him to. I mean, there's nobody really springs to mind as a direct comparison, but there's a fair degree of pace there. There's some trickery. There's directness. Primarily right-footed, so that probably gives you some sort of a picture of the type of player that he is.
What about Timothy Weah then? A little bit older. Probably our listeners are more familiar with him because he's a bit more well-travelled. What would you say about him as a player?
Yeah, this is an older player. He's in his mid-20s. I think he's 25, a USA international. Juventus signed him from Lille in the summer of 2023, so he's been at Juve a couple of seasons. I wouldn't say he's ever fully established himself as a nailed-on starter, although he did start quite a lot of games last season. And one of the reasons was Juve had a lot of injury problems right throughout the season. And what was one of the most impressive things about Weah last season was the versatility that he showed. I mean, for quite a chunk of the second half of the season, he was playing regularly at right back. Now, I never would have believed earlier on in the campaign or in the previous season that this is somebody that I would see playing at right back for Juventus. But when I saw him there, I was quite impressed, actually, for somebody who was Not really that familiar with the position. I thought he adjusted to it very well, and he played all down that right-hand side. So this is somebody who's shown he can play right back at a push. He's obviously ordinarily expecting to see play as a winger, but he could play at wing back as well. He even played as an emergency centre forward as well. In fact, I recall him doing that when I was at Villa Park when Juventus played Aston Villa in a goalless draw in the Champions League. He played centre forward that night at Villa Park, and he's very quick. Again, he can be very direct, but I'd say that he's probably a cleverer player, if I can put it like that, than maybe Mbangula. There's maybe a bit less off the cuff. So he's somebody that obviously has got a very, very famous dad for people who are not aware, with his dad, George, the famous Milan player. And it's quite funny, actually, with that, because obviously George Weah, you would instantly link with Milan, but he was actually a Juventus fan, George Weah. So Timothy is living out his dad's dream by playing for Juventus. He loved Platini, George Weah, which I didn't know until I started reading up on Timothy Weah, that was true. He's an Arsenal fan, actually, Timothy Weah. His mum used to take him to Arsenal games when he was a kid. He's a big fan of Arsene Wenger. And he's somebody as well who, just to give you an idea of maybe inspirations for him, when he was playing at centre forward during the season, he was asked whether that was a position he'd seen himself playing, and he said, yeah, it is actually, because my idol as a kid, this probably make us feel old, was Cavani, the former PSG player. So, yeah, I mean, another thing I would say as well about Timothy Weah is something that I've always been impressed by him, is his attitude too. You know, he was somebody, when he was asked about the fact that he was playing all over the pitch last season, it was just, look, I don't care where I play as long as I'm in the team and I'm helping the team. And he's got a really, really good work rate too, a great attitude. You can tell he's had a really good upbringing. And he's somebody, of course, has played in Britain as well, played at Celtic, won a league title with Celtic. So he's familiar to Britain, not to England, but has played in the UK. And I think he's somebody, again, who, you know, am I looking at him and saying that this is somebody who I think will instantly improve the Nottingham Forest starting 11? I'm not so sure about that. And I would say the same about Mbangula. However, I think in terms of a good squad addition and somebody with the potential, perhaps, to eventually become a regular starter, then that's where I would put him. I don't think this is somebody, as I say, who I would look at and say, I'm not saying he's a world beater, but he's somebody who's impressed me for various reasons. Is he the most technically gifted player? I wouldn't say so, no, but I think there is quality there. And I think, if it's a team that's looking to get more strength in depth and more options, both of these players, if the reported fees are right as well, which are relatively low actually for players who've been at a club the size of Juve and played Champions League football, I would say that they would be good additions to the squads, but I'm not convinced that they necessarily improve the starting 11.
Before we start recording, I got one of our regular contributors in the States to send us a video on Weah, and that tallies exactly with what you said. You know, if it's an upgrade on Jota and Sosa, then it's really good. If it's to replace Elanga, then not so good, which, yeah, fits perfectly with what you were saying. Just on the fees, I'm just looking at Fabrizio Romano's tweet here. Transfer fee of over 20 million euros has been negotiated. I don't know how much over, and I don't know if that tallies with what you've read, Adam, but does that sounds good value to you then?
Is that for the pair that's been reported?
Well, yeah, that's how it says here. Yeah.
I mean, if that is for the pair, I would say that is very good business for Forest, because you're talking about a player in Mbangula who, as I've said, there is a rawness to him. But I do feel that this is somebody who can get a lot better. And I think the Premier League would quite suit his attributes, actually. And I would say the same in that regard about Timothy Weah. And I'm sure there will be people listening or watching who are not regular watchers of Serie A, and they'll be saying, yeah, but, you know, there isn't the physicality, there isn't the energy, there isn't the tempo to Serie A. I'd actually say that isn't really the case anymore. There is a real energy and a tempo to Serie A football. A lot of clubs are looking to play on the front foot. Even some games I watched last season, from a physical and energy point of view, they were very comparable to the Premier League. There is a more tactical emphasis on Serie A. So I don't necessarily think that these two players would be out of place stylistically in the Premier League either. And if that figure is right for the pair of them, I would say like that is really good business for Forest, because they're getting players who will certainly give them more options. And particularly in the case of Mbangula being the much younger of the pair, there's obviously a greater ceiling of growth there. I think Weah is a player who you would probably think at 25 is somewhere, if not at his peak, has got to be near it, hasn't he, in terms of age profile. However, you might say, well, if he's somebody who started more regularly, then we might see a bit more from him. So I'd be very interested to see both of them at Forest and in the Premier League. And if they were to get them for that combined fee, that would be really good business. And I think Juve are a good club for Premier League teams to target, actually, because they're not awash with money and there is high expectation there. And they are a club who are still, believe it or not, a little bit hamstrung financially from the Ronaldo deal all those years ago. They're still, in some ways, feeling the impact from that because it took such a heavy toll on their finances. That, as I say, I think it is a club that ever since has had to sell to buy, has had to be creative. And I remember saying this time a year ago when they were letting go of somebody like Dean Howson, who went to Bournemouth and now is a Real Madrid player, that I felt that they were gambling on selling some, they were selling the future to pay for the present, I think was the way that I put it, letting go some of their promising younger players and almost risking that they wouldn't come to fruition. And they got it completely wrong on House and letting him go. And I guess Forest fans will hope it would be a similar case with somebody like Mbangula, letting him go too soon. And would Juventus end up kicking themselves again that to raise money to buy players who they might feel will go straight into the starting lineup and be effective? They're prepared to sacrifice younger players who've not yet got themselves established in the first team. It is a gamble that Juve have to do, and some of those gambles haven't paid off. For example, one of the players that they looked to try and raise that money for last season was Douglas Luiz from Aston Villa, who had, not entirely through his own fault, he spent a lot of the season out injured. However, he had almost no impact at all at Juve last season. And yet you could say that somebody like a Howson was in part sacrificed to raise the cash to pay for a Douglas Luiz. So Juventus are a club where I think that they are vulnerable still to losing quality young players because they have to sell to buy really very often.
You've answered my question before I asked it, which is shows you're an excellent communicator on this anyway around the finances. Just before I let you go, a couple of quick ones. Just on Doug Luiz, out of curiosity, do you see him moving to the Premier League this summer? He's been linked with Forest and a few other clubs, or will he stick at Juve?
Well, I guess it depends on his appetite to try and make it in Italy and the club's belief in him. It comes down to those two things, really. And I'm not really clear on where either of them are, to be honest with you. I feel as though from the noises that you've heard throughout last season, that it seemed to me like if they were to get an offer that they felt got close to their valuation, I suspect Juve would not be too disappointed to cash in because, as I say, he's not been a success. Maybe there's a feeling that perhaps he struggled not just to adjust to the style of football in Italy and at Juventus, but maybe Serie A as a league. That said, obviously there was a change in management right at the end of last season at Juventus with Motta leaving. And Igor Tudor coming in. So again, I suppose Tudor's assessment of the player and where he thinks he might fit in will be important too. So there's a lot of unknowns perhaps with Douglas Luiz, but with their necessity to raise money to buy, he might be a player, and you consider how much he struggled last season, that they might be willing to cash in on. And he's somebody who's proved himself very able in the Premier League. And a player that I'm sure a lot of clubs, Forest probably included, would be interested in taking if he were to be allowed to leave by Juventus.
Last question I was going to ask then, and I think I probably asked this about Milenkovic. If before we started recording and you were thinking about Mbangula and Weah, if you were to just out of curiosity put a combined value on them and you thought, oh, there's a transfer room there moving, what kind of fee would you have expected then?
A combined fee, that's a good question. Well, Mbangula obviously has come through the youth system. And Weah, I believe they paid about 12 million euro to Lille. That was, as I say, 2 years ago. So I think you'd probably, but when you consider both of them, as I say, were playing in the Champions League last season, both made a number of appearances. I would have thought at least 30 million euro, probably more than that, actually.
Mm.
It's how you assess where Mbangula is and just how much promise there is there. But yeah, I'd have thought certainly 30, perhaps even further north than that, because I was impressed by Weah last season. I have to stress this is not a world beater of a player, but he has qualities that I think can be very useful to a Premier League side in terms of squad building and versatility and attitude and experience at the highest level of club football too. So he could be very, very useful. I would have thought I'd have thought at least 20 million for him alone, perhaps even more like 25. So to get the pair for 20, I think would be really good business. I mean, Mbangula, if I think I'm right in saying, I haven't checked this since before I came on to you, might even be able to tell me yourself, but I'm almost certain he signed a new contract until about 2028 in 2024. So he's got a long time left on his contract as well. I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that. So when you consider that too, I think if they were to get both for 20 million, mate, that would be very good business, and perhaps underlines what I was just saying to you about the fact that Juve are a club that Premier League teams might look to target and think, look, we could get a bargain or two here, particularly if you're squad building in the way that Forest have to do when they are going to need to structure their squad for the demands of European football, which is going to be, that's going to be a big extra demand on them next season, how they cope with that. And players like Mbangula and Weah, particularly Weah, I would say, would be very, very useful to Forest, I think.
Just looking while you were talking there, it said he signed his last contract last year, September last year. I think it was
2028.
Yes, exactly. So he's got 3 years left. Maybe that fee's wrong, but maybe that's just for one of them. It does feel very low to me. And just lastly, same sort of question. You were thinking, they're going to be linked to the Premier League club. Would you be pitching them at a club that's kind of European Conference League, like a Villa, a West Ham, a Newcastle, that kind of club? Does it fit the Forest MO these days, would you say?
Yeah, I think so, because I don't think we've seen enough from Mbangula yet to suggest that he's capable of playing at one of the real top Premier League clubs, a club that you'd expect to be challenging for the title, a club that's playing in the Champions League regularly. I don't feel that this is a player that we've seen enough of to suggest that he's at that level yet. But we all know, how much quality there is in terms of what Belgium can call upon, and he's been called up at senior level. So that tells you that he's somebody who could yet aspire to reach that level. Although, again, I'll underline there is a real rawness to him. I believe Weah is somebody who, again, is not for me somebody who I would see playing a top Champions League level club in England. But I think that he's maybe capable of playing, maybe if you're looking at a squad level player at a club who's maybe challenging for Europe, like some of the names that you've just mentioned there. And certainly I'll put Forest in that bracket now after the season that they've just had. Somebody who's played in European competition, got a lot of appearances in European competition. He's won, I should say as well, he's not just won a league title in Scotland, he won one in France as well with Lille. So, this is a player who's won league titles in 2 European countries, and as an experienced USA international too. So I am really surprised if that figure is correct for the pair of them. That would be, in terms of squad strengthening, I think that would be really good for Forest, actually.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Adam. Loads of good info there. Am I right in saying you'll be commentating on Serie A for the next few years? Did I see you tweet that out?
Yes, we'll be back doing Serie A again next season. I think the contract, I think I'm right in saying, I kind of, this is above my pay grade, so don't take me as possible, but I think the contract was for 3 seasons, so that we'll be into the second season of it. So yeah, I'll be doing the Sunday night games again. I can tell you that for certain. So yeah, really looking forward to that. I think it's still 9 weeks away. So yeah, I'm enjoying the summer months at the minute, having a bit of a rest and getting on holiday and things like that, and trying to learn Italian. Saying to you, but yeah, just enjoying a break at the moment, because it will be full on when it all gets back underway in August.
It certainly will. And hopefully we'll have Adam on again a couple of times through the course of the season. Really value his contributions. Big thanks to Adam. I'll play the clips from Chief and Ruby shortly, and then mention what Fletch thought about Botafogo while he's out there in the States enjoying a well-deserved break. But just for all that, a word for the Trent Navigation, a reminder, our live show is coming up on the 25th of July at 7 p.m. You can catch Lewis and Kelvin on stage with Mikey, Temps, Greg, and Pete. Tickets are only £5. We'll have quiz questions. We'll have a charity auction. You can ask questions in the second half of the show of Kelvin Lewis. If you haven't been before, they're really good shows. I promise. So it'll be a good evening, and it's only £5 on a summer's day. So yeah, it should be good fun. So if you can get your tickets for that one, would certainly really appreciate that. We'll also just give you a reminder of other events coming up at the NAV. Sainsbury's Festival of Love, first of all, that is on Saturday 2 till 10. Alex P is the headliner. Again, get your tickets from gigantic.com. And just a mention as well for the monthly On the Ball football quiz with fathers of this parish. This Thursday, free entry, plus it's pie night, all homemade pies with sides, only £9. That's pretty ridiculous value, certainly. So, yeah, do check all that out. Do come along to our live show, as mentioned. But let's get into a little bit more with Chief and Ruby on Weah. Still waiting for more clarity on the fee. But I've seen a couple of figures mentioned for 20 to 25 million for both of them. So, seems like good value. Let's hear what Chief had to say about, well, first of all, Tim.
All right, it is Barstool Chief, your American Nottingham Forest correspondent, talking about Timothy Weah, the rumors that he's going to Forest for $20 million. I love the deal if it's an upgrade over Jota or Sosa, if it's intended to be a replacement for Elanga or Callum Hudson-Odoi. I do not like it. Weah will run all day. He has some finishing ability. Some decision-making, not the best. The red card in the Gold Cup last year, disaster. But a good player, great for Conference League, great off the bench. If he's in your starting 11, I would say that that's a downgrade, but depending on what his role is, could be a good fit for Nuno and the Trees.
So that was Chief on Tim Weah, one of our American regulars, of course. And here's Ruby, who sees him more of, likes him as a wing back more than anything. So here's Ruby's thoughts.
I don't have any super strong opinions on Tim Weah. I think he's very fast, and I think where he may lack in technique, he makes up for in speed. I'm just worried because I think he fits better in a 3-back and like a 4 or 5 midfield system, but we don't generally play that. Obviously, we have with Morato as the 3rd center back. I think he'd fit in well when we play there, but besides that, I don't see him fitting in as an out-and-out attacking winger like we use Hudson-Odoi and Elanga, so that's where I'm a little bit nervous. I'm just trying to figure out where he fits in really well. And I don't know if I see a position for him because he's not a right back either. So I think it's interesting. I'm just wondering what Nuno is thinking, because in the system we normally play, I don't think he has a spot.
Thanks to those guys for that on Weah in particular, and Adam as well. As mentioned, Botafogo playing in the Club World Cup tonight. 3 players linked with Forest. Who knows how many will actually sign? Igor Jesus seems likely. Jaya Cunha seems a maybe, and who knows about Cuiabano. But Fletch was out there watching the game. They, as I say, lost 1-0 to Atletico Madrid, but they are through, which I don't think is a particularly good thing for Forest. But been conversing with Fletch by text. He was impressed with Igor Jesus. Most of the 3 liked him. Said I'd sign him with confidence, and said a bit of Tevez about him in terms of a terrier-like attitude. So liked him. Didn't see as much in this game in Jaya Cunha and Cuiabano. Cuiabano looked a little bit nervy, he thought, and he questioned Cuiabano's defensive savvy and athleticism on this occasion. That's the first time he's seen him for 90 minutes, and I've seen him for 90 minutes. I know Jaya Cunha and got really good reviews against PSG, and obviously Igor Jesus has been tearing it up. It was good to get Fletcher's thoughts, having seen them in person. He'll be on Monday, so we'll pick his brain more about that, but he was there for this one. Right, just wrapping things up. Thanks very much to Nottingham Window Company for sponsoring us as our second sponsors of this episode. If you're looking for new windows or new doors, as ever, check out the link in the description. Local company, obviously, and a strong Forest connection there as well. That's how the deal came about. Actually, they fit my windows and doors, as mentioned, so I can vouch for them certainly for that big purchase, because it is a big purchase to think about. So yeah, they did a good job for us, certainly. We shall be back tomorrow. I think the plan is I'm going to speak to Samit Patel, Notts cricket legend, get his thoughts on Forest. He's a big Forest fan, and a bit of chat about himself. And we'll have a couple of other guests, I'm sure, coming up through the week. If you like all this that we've put together this evening at short notice, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe, do consider membership or Patreon, or a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Right, thanks very much for your company this evening. This wasn't planned at all, but it's been quite good fun to do it at short notice and get some thoughts on these two Juventus players, because I didn't know much about them. A bit on Weah, obviously, but not so much the other lads. So I hope this has informed you. Do us a favour here, like as mentioned. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.